See, she has the giggles. Welcome to the About Sex podcast. I'm Joshua Skirtu, and with me, as always, is my lovely wife, Angela Skirtu.
Hi.
Tell them who you are, Angela.
I'm a licensed marriage therapist and ASEX certified sex therapist.
Oh, yeah. And with us today, we have... Oh, where'd it go? Patricia
Dr.
Coughlin. Dr. Pat. Can we call you Pat?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, Pat. So you are you have a BSN and an MS in nursing and LCSW social work. You taught at SLU, Maryville, Washington University, MOBAP, and Deacon? Is that how you say that? Deaconess. You worked as a nurse at Cardinal Glennon, and in the ICU, you started the PMS Center in 1983. It's now called Life Cycles Counseling. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of experience.
Yeah, you left out the PhD, though.
Oh, yeah.
You're a doctor,
you're
right?
a PhD, Dr. Pat.
Yeah.
It's good to meet you.
That other kind of doctor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got all these other things going on, too.
Lots of cool things.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
So what was all that like?
Yeah. Tell us about your life.
Yeah, many years.
Many years.
Yes, worked nights at Cardinal Glennon Hospital while I went to school in the daytime.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Raised 5 children.
5 kids.
She has 5. That's a lot of kids. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
You like a lot of kids, I guess.
Love kids.
Yeah, we love kids, too. We have a daughter.
We have one.
But we have one. And we're good.
5 seems overwhelming, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have the one, and I can't imagine having 4 more of those.
Oh, my gosh.
It would drive me mad.
I'd have had more if I'd stayed married longer.
Yeah.
Oh,
you would
really?
want more?
How many would you have had?
7.
7.
7
That's
kids.
a lot of kids.
That's a lot, yeah.
I
Wow.
wanted 7.
You have more kids than adults. I feel like you shouldn't be outnumbered by your children, because then they're like an army against you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they'll gang up on you. They'll take you down. They go for the ankles. when they're small.
Exactly. So maybe we should talk, like, the first thing that like popped out of me, even in your like bio, is like the PMS Center. So like, I mean, are you open to starting with that first?
Yeah, let's start with PMS.
Like,
We were talking
tell us all
about that a
about
little
PMS
bit.
and why that's important.
Okay, well, I guess I'd start by saying that I began to be interested in women's actions in terms of crime when I worked with the women in the jail. And
You worked with women offenders. What were they
women
normally there for?
offenders. Well, I started off at a place called, just actually going out there for classes to a place called Merrimack Hills, which was a home for juvenile female offenders. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these girls exhibited behavior that they couldn't figure out. They used to say, well, you know, right before my period, I do this and I feel this way and I go crazy and I do things I don't want to do, anger and sometimes some violent acts.
Mm-hmm. They do things they would regret.
That was in my mind for a very, very long time. And I worked with these women, and I think I mentioned in my bio that I started the first female halfway house in the United States, Magdala
awesome.
House, which is, by the way, still going. It is now a lot more of a home for mentally challenged adults, and they have residences for them. But anyway, later I had a friend who began to exhibit some behaviors that I thought was pretty bizarre. She was a close friend of mine. Sometimes she would be a very normal person, and other times she would just absolutely be off the wall. And she...
Hi, Angela.
She moved away.
I'm joking.
And went to a doctor up in the East who diagnosed her with having premenstrual syndrome. Mm-hmm. And this particular doctor, at some point later, invited Dr. Katharina Dalton from England to come to the United States to give a workshop on the premenstrual syndrome. She is the person, Dr. Dalton is the person who actually named it the premenstrual syndrome. Oh. I attended that lecture, or that workshop. It was a weekend thing, and it answered all the questions that I had for many, many years about why women, for no reason it seems whatsoever, they exhibit behavior that is just absolutely not like their normal behavior.
Right.
Well, something we were saying before we started taping is a lot of times it's directed at
their spouse,
a
or
spouse,
their partner,
or a loved one.
Yeah.
Why is that, you think?
Well, because the loved one is the person that they know will always be accepting to them.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't do things like that to stranger
Mm-hmm.
because deep down you don't want to. You somehow know that you can't do that, and
Yeah.
you kind of always hurt the ones we love.
Oh yeah.
We're
You
more
definitely hurt the
we're
ones you
more
love.
we're more comfortable doing
Well,
that.
you guys are always doing crazy stuff. Maybe it's because you guys are annoying.
Yeah, well,
And that's why she beats me. There you go. No.
that's true.
Bad Angela.
No,
That's
I don't
true.
really beat him. We
That's
do
true.
not advocate for physical violence on
No.
the show or off of it.
Yeah, I'm supposed to tell you she does not hit me unequivocally. It doesn't
Yeah,
happen.
unless you have PMS, and then you get a good excuse.
And then I have a free pass, and we
Yes.
just move on from those
Yes.
days. No.
But the thing that's interesting about PMS, it's been around forever. But what we have been seeing, or what we were seeing, is physicians will treat this with antidepressants,
Yeah.
all kinds of psychotropic kind of drugs. And I am like so against those for
Yeah.
PMS.
Really?
Because it is not a mental thing, it's a hormonal thing. And you can tell it by their lab work.
Right.
Really?
I mean, you test the labs and you will see, and what seems to be the hormone most involved with premenstrual syndrome is progesterone.
So you get tested for your
get
estrogen,
tested.
progesterone, testosterone,
Yes,
those?
all three of those.
Okay.
Yes. And
Are those done in a normal panel, or are those a special
a
test?
special hormone panel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be different. And those are in almost, I would say 98% of the women who come to my office for treatment of, menopausal problems, postpartum depression, premenstrual syndrome, any of those things, about 98 or 99% of them will show some sort of a deficiency in their labs in terms of their hormones.
Huh.
Yes.
How do you get tested? Like, would you go to your OBGYN? Is there a special place you have to go?
No, it's like-
OBGYN
yeah.
has to order
Okay,
it, or
okay.
your normal, regular.
Like you
people-
go to the doctor for the hormone stuff. Like it's the same
Yeah,
kind of person.
I have thyroid stuff, so I go to a doctor for that.
I love that
Yeah.
you do this.
Oh, well, because
The
it does.
crazy
I
sign,
had an overactive thyroid in my
Yeah.
high school senior year, and everybody said, Angela, you're a different person. I almost
Yeah.
died. So, like,
Yeah.
technically, they were
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, you had Graves'
But I had a
disease.
completely different personality when the hormones were off.
Well,
Yeah.
we also almost always test thyroid. Also,
Yeah, that's one
It's-
that's
it's
commonly undiagnosed or missed, I hear.
Yes, it really is. But yes, most women will show some deficiency based on the kinds of symptoms that they have. So what I do is I take a good history of what they're experiencing in terms of their symptoms and their lifestyle in terms of their nutrition and their activities and stress levels and so on. And then take a look at their labs and try to put together a picture of what is possibly causing this particular kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And you can almost point to which hormone it is, depending on what kind of symptoms that they're having.
So what do you do to, like,
Is there a
make
treatment
the
for it?
hormones better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well-
my question.
well,
How do we fix this
Well,
problem?
the way that it's been, as I mentioned before, the way it had been treated, and probably still is in most cases,
Yeah.
other than at my particular office,
Yeah.
the birth control pill.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the treatment. No matter what kind of symptoms a woman have, put her on the birth control pill.
Right. Because that does have
Which-
progesterone in it.
Yes, it
Yeah, it
does.
has an amount, but it may not be the correct amount.
It's synthetic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas the hormones I recommend are the bioidentical, which are exactly like what your own body produces. But the thing about the birth control pill is it's like one thing fits everybody, or they make, but they're not individually designed like the bioidentical hormones are.
Yeah.
In other words, it's no one thing fits all, because different people react to it. And I think more people, women with PMS, have a lot of difficulty on the birth control pill. It actually makes them crazy.
Oh, it makes it
Or
worse.
makes it worse in some cases.
Well, because think
Yeah.
if there's an itch, so like usually they're using estrogen and progesterone in those pills, and there's basically a standard amount, and then there's a higher dose. And so like if your hormones are already off, and then you just add
Yeah.
to them. I don't think that would
Right.
necessarily fix it. You might
Right.
need a specific kind to like adjust the progesterone or the estrogen.
More like
Exactly.
more like a supplement
Yeah.
where you're actually
Yeah,
And
well,
I-
just adjusting. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, go on. You should tell us, expert.
No, I'm not, and I'm not absolutely sure that the birth control pill doesn't eventually cause more problems in some women. I find like a high correlation between the birth control pill and endometriosis in women when they start that birth control pill
What's
at such a young age.
endometriosis?
Well, that's getting into a whole nother category. It's
Yeah.
a lot of that, like a what would you say?
Cysts and
That's the
like
cyst
tumors
syndrome.
down here that
Covering, and it's not only in the uterus and the tubes and the ovaries and that, it sometimes escapes
and it
goes
causes
different
some
places.
infertility in some women, or
a lot
makes,
of infertility in women.
and it's painful too. It's
Yeah.
very painful.
So
That's not good.
I'm not sure about the birth control pill. And
Yeah.
actually, I think the birth control pill is one of the reasons why we have a lot of the dysfunction that we have in marriages.
Interesting. Well, when you were she said she wanted to talk about sexual dysfunction. Tell us all about this.
Well,
in marriage.
Okay, it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Sure,
and,
sure.
And I'm not really a
You're
sex
allowed to have an
therapist.
opinion.
Yeah, you can have it. We'll
You
allow
may
it.
be wrong, but
Thank
well,
you. Well, you can cut me out if you don't.
no,
agree.
no,
you're fine.
we're interested in your
I
stories.
think, well, the way that I feel about it is that when the birth control pill came, that we were able to get that, people started having, of course, sex more often maybe than what normally would have been if you're not interested in having kids. At least.
Well, I think
until
people just
later.
always have sex. I think they just had more accidents
Well,
back then.
Well,
More accidents
Well-
or
Or
surprises.
surprises. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm not sure. I think that we know that, or at least we hope that abortion wasn't as common as it is
Right.
now.
Yep.
I think more.
Well, yeah, because more people aren't having.
more people
unwanted
practice
children.
rhythm,
Yeah.
and sex wasn't that available. Now, I think, in my own opinion, is that once something is made that it's so easy and so common that it's just like eating. When you have too much of it, it's not good for you, or too much of exercise, not good for you.
Well, I don't know if you can have too much sex.
No, you can't.
Well,
You won't get that from us.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I'm
Okay,
not
you can have a
sure.
different
Well,
opinion.
no, if you're having it 7 times a day, maybe
that
you
might be
slow
too
down a
much.
bit.
That's true.
I'm-
But we're
Like,
married.
Really,
we
can
have
you
sex
even
all
work?
the time.
Well, see, I'm probably pretty old-fashioned when it
Yeah.
comes to that.
Yeah.
I think that what you have maybe too early, maybe too often, or too much available, that it maybe doesn't have the same effect or the same feeling. And I think in a lot of ways, I think that is what turns a lot of people to other kinds of things, like maybe pornography, or maybe young children, or
Oh.
whatever else we're seeing. And I'm not
go to
saying
children.
but that's what I think. My opinion of it, and I could be totally wrong.
I haven't necessarily, since I am the sex therapist, I really see that, people who do some of those more problematic things have more of a proclivity for them initially.
Yeah.
So, we've done research on people who are, attracted, so we, have them look at, pedophiles, for example, look at, women who are full-figured versus children, and they actually have, a biological desire for people who don't have curves. So it's kind of gross, but
Yeah.
it's something that they kind of have
A disorder.
a
it seems.
disorder. We would
Yeah.
consider it like a problematic thing in their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And as sex therapists, we tend to be really open about porn, but I also am respectful of values. So I want to throw out there that I'm guessing we have some differences in our values, but I'm not here to judge on that. And one thing I do with a lot of my clients who have that value system is that it's important, no matter who you're with, that you're with somebody with similar values. So if you're in a relation, if you're a person who doesn't like porn, you should be with another person who has that similar value. But there are other couples
Oh
that
yeah, we
do
see that a lot where the
include
women will be
porn.
very much against porn.
Well, yeah,
And
it's
then she
actually
marries a
often
man.
women, but
Yeah.
and the man is well, this is what I'm going to do. And so I'd say
No,
it's
what they'll
important
do
to
is
have
they'll
a
say, "Yeah,
conversation
baby, I
about
would-"
it to make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, but 100% the guy will say, "No, I don't watch porn.
Well,
I
that's
just
the
need
problem.
you."
Don't lie. If you watch
they do.
porn, don't lie to her. Tell her what you
100%
do,
they do.
so she can make a conscious decision about whether she wants to
Yeah.
be with that guy.
Well, I would like to think, though, that in a relationship, and again, I can only talk for myself, and I'm kind of old-fashioned, in case you haven't
Yeah,
noticed.
we've
Yeah,
noticed,
yeah.
and it's okay. You're allowed to
Yes.
be.
We'll allow it.
that that do you have to have that kind of thing in order to have an amazing sexual encounter?
Not necessarily.
And is maybe once you go down that road, that's the road you have to keep going, and then it keeps going into other things and more things where you have to do it in the stove and refrigerator.
Well,
That's
only
one we haven't tried yet.
only a gas stove, first of all.
Yes.
What?
So
I've never heard the stove.
again,
That's a new one.
I'm probably
You might like it a certain way, in a certain style. And of course, as a sex therapist, I'm all about
Yes.
expanding and
Yes.
growing, but within
Right.
people's values.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like, if
Uh-huh.
somebody wants to have sex in a stove, they have every
Right.
right to do so. But if they
Mm-hmm.
don't, then it's about finding a way within their value system to enjoy sex for themselves.
Right.
yes. So again, it is a personal thing.
Sure.
And but I just always go back to a couple of things. The most loving, intimate, beautiful relationship where that person's body is the most wonderful thing, and that's all that it takes is just that person's body, nothing else.
Yep.
So,
Good to
but
go.
again, I admit that I'm pretty old-fashioned in my values,
You're fine.
and I managed to have 5 children,
Yeah.
feeling like I feel.
You had to at least have sex 5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least.
But also, I
Only
do
teasing.
have to throw in that the hormones are a very big part of this whole thing. I mean, I
Okay.
think you have to, in order to have a deep fulfillment in sex, that you have to have the right hormone balance. Because
Yeah.
if you're like deficient in let's say testosterone, that very much affects the sex drive.
Oh yeah, that
Oh, yeah.
controls
And-
the sex drive 100%.
And your energy and everything else.
Yeah.
Women being tired and worn out feeling, that definitely. Sometimes, of course, a lot of women in menopause have hot flashes and those kind of things. They don't feel like having sex. They're
And their
tired.
bodies change too, right? Like the
So, yeah,
estrogen.
like,
go
that
on,
was
ask,
actually kind of the
honey.
main topic of today is menopause, actually.
Yes.
We haven't even gotten
why
to
don't
it
we
yet.
talk a little bit
Let's
about
talk about
menopause?
menopause.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well,
what is menopause?
well,
Can you guys go over that for me? Like what
It's-
happens?
Oh
Well-
yeah, do it all in one
Like
moment.
assume I know nothing because I do know
All
very
right.
little on this topic.
Well, at some point in time in women's lives,
Mm-hmm.
and it usually is around, somewhere 49, 50, 51, 52, around those years,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
her menstrual period stops.
They go away.
It goes away.
What's
But,
happening physically
That
causes it to
means
go
that
away?
the ovaries are not producing as they did before,
Yep.
and the hormones just become very deficient. We still produce these
Mm-hmm.
hormones, our adrenal glands produce them, but we do not produce them in the same amount.
Right.
Some
because they're
women
not having
go
to keep
through
the
this absolutely perfectly. They don't have a one problem.
no hot flashes, nothing.
hot
They're good to
flashes.
go.
They're good to go.
But some
But some women have a really
Some
difficult.
women have a very difficult
time.
time. Some of the things, though, that I have found, and again, this is just in my practice, that lead to difficulty is women who have had, say, for instance, tubal ligations.
what's that?
Well, that's where it's a form of birth control pill where they have their tubes, what they call tied their
Oh,
tubes.
they have the
Oh
tubes
yeah, or
tied.
they have them like
Because what seems to happen is the ovaries do not get the circulation that they need and begin to be diminished in their production of the hormones. So a lot of the worst symptoms I see are in women who've had tubal ligation.
Yeah.
interesting. What about like with they get the hysterectomy? Does that affect it?
Well, interestingly enough, women do actually better with the hysterectomy.
Because they don't have
I've
any
heard that
ovaries.
And
because
again-
some of them don't like they go through like a premenopause, but then it kind of just is done and then they're
Yeah.
leveled out.
They're leveled out. Sometimes they do need the hormones with
Sure.
with that, and most of the time, physicians will put a woman on the hormones after a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
I think it's probably based on if they need them or not.
Yep.
And again, all you got to do is the blood work
Yep.
and their symptoms. If they're not having any symptoms, then fine. I had a pretty early hysterectomy, and I never had to go on the hormones.
Yeah.
I see.
So what are some of the negative symptoms they can get with menopause? Like
Hot flashes.
hot flashes?
Oh yeah, that seems to be the big one.
It's where they're just burning up.
Thinning of the vagina too.
Yes,
And
it-
like less
Vaginal walls.
It ma-
lubrication.
It makes sex painful.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest things that I hear.
Yeah.
And of course, you can use hormones for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
lots of lubricant.
And estrogen is linked to that. So like testosterone is linked more to the
Well,
desire,
and
estrogen to the
actually,
lubrication. Go on.
Well, even without the lubrication, just the estrogen itself will eventually, within a short time, help that lubrication
Oh, yeah?
itself. Yeah,
That's
so
good.
you don't actually need the
So the hormone
cream.
replacement does help with
hormone
that.
replacement will increase the, the mucosa of the vaginal walls.
Cool.
Okay.
Does
Interesting.
PMS go away entirely after that?
Oh, that's an interesting
It is
question.
interesting because PMS we see in very young girls starting sometimes, like you'll see them as soon as maybe their period starts, like 12, 13, 14.
They'll get it that
You
young.
may see a little bit of change in their behavior right before their period, within like a week before, and then the period comes and then they're just fine. Some much worse than others, though. Some kids really have a problem.
Yeah.
That's where I began when I started out saying about the little female offenders. The girls used to talk about that, how they felt that they just changed at
They
that
got lots
time.
of aggression
Yes.
and yeah.
So I see that a lot. So PMS is more up to maybe, in their 40s or before they are maybe perimenopausal.
Yeah.
They seem to have the problems, but the problems are pretty much the same, actually,
Yeah.
because some women in menopause, feel crazy and they feel like anxious and they, many different kinds of depression, angry outbursts, screaming, yelling at their kids, and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
But
So-
after menopause, does it change at all? Like, how does that?
No, it really doesn't. They're
No?
just different.
They're just different.
Yes,
Yeah.
they,
So they'll still have some.
they'll have
It's like the
sympt-
grumpy cat women.
They'll
Yeah.
have yes, they'll have symptoms, but they'll be you just add in the hot flashes and those kinds.
So there's
of
other
things.
things to be annoyed about. Yeah.
Yes.
Because you got hot
So
flashes.
if those hormones are kind of put together well, and if a woman kind of feels imbalanced, then after menopause, is sex a little bit better for them? Or
Yes, if you get the hormones straightened out and with the right kind of maybe counseling or therapy, yes, I think sex can be just as wonderful as it always is. But I think it also has a lot to do with nutrition and exercise.
I
you
agree
have
with
to
that.
feel
Those
healthy.
kinds of things too.
Yeah.
In general,
I had
even when you're younger, you still have to try to be healthy.
Yes.
Well,
you
I
absolutely do.
went to a lecture with another sex therapist, and he said he could point in a crowd, like if you looked at a baseball game, he could point who was going to have erectile dysfunction, and it was usually guys who had a cigarette in their hand and a beer in the
Beer,
other
and they
hand,
were overweight.
and they were overweight.
Yeah.
Sure.
Not that I'm saying overweight people can't have sex, because obviously anyone can have sex if they want to, but if you really want to have good function in the long term, then you've got to take care of your body.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't smoke. Don't.
Well,
drink.
and you mentioned
eat healthy.
alcohol. See, I think alcohol definitely decreases a person's desire for
It can.
sex, and I think it diminishes the feelings that you can have. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely, because it's a numbing agent,
yes,
so you
yes.
can't feel.
Another thing I feel
Oh, yeah.
about
Nobody wants to have
dysfunction-
sex when they're drunk. Or,
Well, people
it doesn't
do,
work
but
out as
actually,
well.
I think sober sex is the best kind of sex. I really
Right,
do.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, it would be.
One
Like
of the-
anything.
It's already amazing enough. Why do you need to be drunk? Come
Yeah.
on.
Like it
That's-
already comes with
it
a high.
takes,
Yeah.
It takes away from it.
Exactly.
I
think.
agree. I agree
Yeah,
with that.
I don't think it adds to
Also,
it.
I think this dysfunction, erectile dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
I think in a lot of ways comes from, again, people talk about it too much. Every time you turn on the radio, you're hearing about this drug and that drug for
Mm-hmm.
this. And it's just like, come on, does every man in the world have sexual dysfunction? I don't think so.
No, but a lot
why do
do.
they talk about it so much?
Because they can make money
Money,
selling
they
them the
make money
pills.
off of it.
Because
Well,
Viagra's
but-
like $12 a pill.
But
That's
then,
why. Or
I
more.
think it makes men worry about it too
Oh yeah.
much.
Performance
You don't-
anxiety is a big cause
You
of it.
don't
Definitely.
have to worry about it. It's okay if you can't do it right now, then do it tomorrow,
do it
or
tomorrow.
do
You're
something
good.
else. Love each other.
Yeah, there are other
kiss
ways to
each
move around.
other.
Well,
hold
that's
each
another piece of
other.
it. So, like, some of my couples, they've
That's a
kind
big
of
part of your
reduced.
treatment is-
Yeah, a big part of my treatment is expanding sexual horizons, because what happens is a guy will take the pill, and here's what he'll do: he'll just sit and wait and hope for the best. And I'm like,
And that is
none
the
of that's
greatest way.
sexy.
Yeah, right.
And it's maybe it'll like perk up a little bit, but like what they're supposed to be doing is
Yeah.
getting
okay,
involved.
take the pill.
Yeah.
Now let's make out. Now let's have a little
Yes.
foreplay. Now let's
Wait,
enjoy each
wait,
other.
Wait.
and-
You're not supposed to just take the pill and then roll her over and lay on top? No, that's not sex.
That's not sexy. I mean, you can have that sex, but that's not good for her either.
No.
She needs to be
No.
worked in. They say women are ovens.
You got to warm them up. Yep. Preheat.
There's just too much worry about it. I mean,
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
they
There's a
don't
lot of
have to-
anxiety.
It's okay, guys. You don't have to worry about that kind of thing. It's all right if it doesn't happen. It'll happen the next time. Just take the pressure off of that.
That
and
is a
for
big
women
part of it.
also, you don't have to fake it at all. If it's not, it's not. Just like fine, work
Yeah.
at it.
Don't
Maybe
fake it.
tomorrow will be better.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of women feel because they don't know their ovens, that they take a little time. They'll be taking a half an hour, 45 minutes, and in here they're so worried about like, am I doing it right? Am I taking too long? This is doing too much. When
They're not focused
they're
on
not
just
focused,
enjoying it.
and relaxation is a big part
Oh.
of good
Oh,
sex.
yeah,
Just
mindful.
enjoy yourself, have fun, play, but don't be too focused on your performance.
Yes.
And honestly, if I can really get couples to do that, they have great sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be relaxed and
Yeah,
get in
I
there.
don't know if you've seen any.
Get in there. Well, I didn't mean that, but yeah, that works
It's like,
too.
that was very direct, honey.
Yeah.
Get in there.
I don't know if you've seen any of the Handmaid's Tale. I mean,
No, I won't
oh,
see
if
it.
you want to know about that kind of thing, just look at that. It
Where
won the
he's-
Emmys.
They're just rolling them over and
well,
getting
Handmaid's
take a
Tale.
look at the
I will have to
Handmaid's
watch
Ta-
that. So you will learn about sex in the Handmaid's Tale.
Well, it's very different. It's
very
very
different.
different, but kind of along the lines we talked about.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
these women who are, forced into these kinds of things. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
You know, if we can change topic a little bit to the good
No.
stuff, I'm really
Okay.
curious about your show, because actually Dr. Pat used to have a radio show.
I did.
Yeah.
It
Tell
was,
us about the show and
Well,
what got you into it.
It was called What's Up, Doc.
What's up, Doc?
That's cute.
And
Like
yes,
Bugs Bunny.
yes, Bugs Bunny was what came on. That's my
Oh,
music.
that's
was
cute.
Oh, okay,
Bugs
cool.
Bunny music.
Merry
But
Melodies.
anyway, the way I got started, as I mentioned, I taught at Washington University,
Mm-hmm.
and I taught a child development through the lifestyle. And at the end of one of the semesters, I showed a pro-life film.
Hmm.
It was called The Silent Scream at that time. It was one of the very early pro-life films. I had told everyone I was going to show it. I gave them all permission that they didn't have
And
to watch it.
obviously
They
that's
could
your
leave.
political stance.
Yes, yes, very much so. And I'm kind of boring, you see. I'm
No,
this,
you're
you're fine.
okay.
this Catholic.
We like to talk about all kinds of
conservative-
people.
Well, anyway, 4 of the women in the class, before it even started, got up and actually went to administration to try to get me fired from the job. I had
Wow.
taught there for years. And they kind of succeeded, sort of. The administration didn't actually fire me, but they came and said, I think that this next semester we're going to let somebody else do your particular job. So
I see.
I was,
So they did fire
You're
you,
I
kind
was
of fired.
fired.
Yeah.
but anyway,
which is hard.
Missouri,
Well, I think a lot of people, when they're going to a class, they don't want to be forced into one political view or the other. And I feel
Well-
that way too. Like anytime I have a teacher who's really a hippie or one who's really conservative, and
On
they
either
start
side.
they start to push their agenda on me, and I'm like,
Well,
I don't
but it-
care. I just want to learn about books.
Well,
Like,
I wasn't. I truly wasn't pushing my agenda
Sure.
on them. I just felt that it was part of the child development program. But anyway, the way that it got started was this: Missouri Right to Life picketed the school.
Oh,
walked
really?
Around with the
Interesting.
They did because of this, and because all the radio stations picked it up, and the
I see.
television.
It was a
ra-
story.
They're like, this is a
National
story.
television picked it up.
Oh,
It
wow.
was
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
Kinda big-
anyway,
you
what
were a
it-
big deal.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you know this, but
So
I'm kind of
then-
a big deal.
WGNU asked me to come on, and again, it was on several different things, but WGNU, I went there, and it's a talk show you call in.
Yeah.
And I did. I just went there and talked to the people on the phone. Well, at that time, Chuck Norman, very conservative owner of that particular radio station, asked me if I would like to be a permanent host. And I did,
worked
and
out.
I did it for many, many, many years. I can't even remember. Maybe
I was going to
9,
ask, like, how long?
probably 9 years,
9
something
years?
like that.
That's cool.
And I had either 1 or 2 hours, and it was it became a very obviously political.
Yeah.
And it was during George Bush's time, and
The
before
first
that
one
too.
or the second one?
No, not the first
George
one.
H.
Sorry,
W.
Two of 'em,
Oh,
yeah.
George
yeah,
W.
Yeah, I
Okay.
forgot about the other
Good
one.
old W.
GW.
Anyway, so at that time, it was a very political call-in, and the audience, of course, very liberal. And
It's interesting that the audience was real liberal
yes.
and you're more conservative. I
Yes.
wonder why
Wait,
you
really?
attracted that crowd.
Wait,
well,
really?
Well,
Are you,
well,
wait,
I
are you
did
serious?
it.
It was-
They love to call up and argue with me.
Oh,
you see.
okay.
That's the point of it.
That's why
So
you
it's
asked, are
because-
we going to be
Yeah.
arguing on the show? I'm like,
Yes.
no, we
No.
just talk and listen to you.
Right. But the
That's
very
funny.
interesting point about this, though, is that whereas those 4 women try to stop my being able to talk about this pro-life
really gave
issues,
you a platform.
They gave me a
They gave
huge
you a huge
platform where for
platform.
many years I spoke
funny.
to millions of people about it.
That's funny.
So anyway,
Wait, so really most of you was
Well,
like,
you
pretty
know, like
many-
Howard Stern, they used to say that like some of the people liked his show, but a lot of the people hated his show. They just wanted to hear what he
it
was
was
going to
like
say next.
because they wanted to see the
Yeah.
car wreck.
Yeah,
That's what
right?
they saw. Is
It's
they wanted to
interesting.
see people argue,
Yes.
and that's
People like
interesting.
what they don't
Yes,
like. That's
eventually
weird.
they
people
won,
like
though.
controversy.
People like
eventually,
controversy, yeah.
eventually they won.
Yeah.
They won.
I wonder if we
Well, 9
attract a
years is a-
conservative audience.
I don't know.
I doubt it. Probably.
Maybe, who knows?
I
I'm
don't
always
know.
surprised at who's listening to us, but it's always on both sides, actually. You know, people, I
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
very conservative people tell me, I'm listening to your show, and I hear very liberal people and
Yep.
people right in the middle.
Yeah, we
And
try to
really, we
stay
just try to
neutral
respect
when it
people's
comes to
values,
politics.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think arguing with each other about our values really does anything. I think
No.
just honest conversations where we listen to each other has a better effect.
Plus,
Doesn't
we
mean
don't-
we're going to be exactly the same, but it doesn't
Oh,
mean we can't
absolutely.
learn either.
And we don't take callers, so we don't have anybody
We don't
to
take
argue
college,
with.
so we don't have any people who are going to be like, you're wrong.
They'd be screaming at me now,
Oh, yeah.
probably.
Well, at least the liberal. Once the conservatives will be like, yes.
Okay,
right?
so we're gonna get a call from Danny in Ohio. Hey, how you doing, Danny? You suck.
No. Yeah, but it was fun.
What's the point of that, though,
It
right?
was fun. Gradually, I was too conservative for the station, and
Yeah.
it was sort of I was overwhelmed.
out, yeah.
But it took a long time to get me
Yeah,
there.
9 years. That's
Yeah.
a good run.
Yeah, it was a long time, but it was fun, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
it's fun.
cool.
That's why we do this. It's fun.
That's why we do it too. Yeah, we
Yep.
love it. We love educating people. And my favorite part is just when people tell me, I've been listening to this show. And one time, for example, I had a client who contacted me and they're like, I've already listened to these episodes. We're ready to come see you as a therapist. So like they already trusted me.
They already knew you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
And I was like,
okay.
well, that's great. Good
That
for
works
you,
out.
man. So I don't even have to do work anymore. No, I'm
Uh-huh.
just kidding.
Yeah, no,
It's like,
There's
wait, you-
always work.
that's great.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
Another thing I used to talk about, I didn't mention it in my bio there, but
Mm-hmm.
I also was I was in the Army Nurse Corps Reserves.
Oh.
And that was a pretty interesting thing too. So I talked a lot about that kind of thing, the military and patriotic kinds of things. So that was all part of my whole thing I talked about on the radio, and then people were always interested in that. And
That's cool.
What were some of your funnest TV shows you got to appear on?
Oh yeah, you were on television
She was
too.
on
like-
television.
Yes,
Sally
Jesse Raphael at
That's
the
awesome.
time. Yes, I mean, yeah. That's so now you
So
know
how did that work out?
Now you know how old
Like
I
that-
am because
that's-
that's a long time ago.
Well,
That was when I was a kid, I think.
it was in the 90s.
Everybody,
yeah.
everybody
We
was
were
a
around
kid.
in the 90s.
But
yeah.
everybody was watching Sally. She had the red glasses.
The big red
that was kind of her
glasses,
calling
yes.
card.
And she had on a psychiatrist at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and the two of us dialogued together. And whereas he was trying to promote premenstrual syndrome as being a mental disorder,
Mm-hmm.
I took it from the other level and was able
Hormonal,
to
yeah.
really, I think, really put across my point that it is not just that.
No.
There's
think people-
the symptoms perhaps look
Appear
to
that
be
way.
They
but-
are mental.
Yes,
but
but it
that's
isn't.
but the actual cause is more
Yes.
hormonal.
But even
and I
like-
think a lot of people don't really. People try to disconnect the brain from the
The
hormones
whole
in the
body
body.
is connected.
Right.
But
You
like
don't
there
have
is
two
no
separate entities.
Yeah, like you can't say, "Oh, this is
Right.
a psychic disorder or this is a physical disorder. No, it's all physical. It's all your
That's
body.
why
Yes.
mental health has been putting more effort into nutrition too, because
Yes.
we're recognizing that like if people have proper nutrition, they
Right.
tend to be happier and healthier.
What?
Well, another,
Not pizza and hot dogs every day?
no.
Oh no.
You know, another thing that we
Making me take vitamins now.
I am. I'm totally making them take a multivitamin.
And I have to be outside and have the sun touch me. Oh. So I get vitamin D. That's
Yeah.
great.
Tell us your story. I do have
Well-
to keep us on track.
I
know,
try to derail
He
it.
does all the
That's kind of
time.
my job.
Oh, that's all right. Now, where was I?
Like, what was I saying?
Well, what
Something about health.
Well, another thing that I think points to the, premenstrual syndrome is that let's take, for instance, you see behavior of kids, and you probably see it in boys too, but I'm not as familiar with that. You might be able to
I
tell
do
me
know
about that.
boys. That does
But
sound-
You know of them.
I know
At
of them.
around 12 or 13, the behavior seems to sometimes change.
Oh, it always does.
a lot
definitely.
of different kinds of things.
Men
Oh
and
yeah,
women.
they stay in their seats in class because they're getting erections, not for
Well,
their
yeah,
choice.
your whole body is being flooded with hormones
Yeah.
because you're starting
Like
puberty.
a girl could just look at them and they're
Yeah.
like, oh.
Yeah.
So behavior
It
difference.
is, and that's when your forebrain really starts to grow and you start to have discernment. Really, it's when you start to become an adult.
But your brain doesn't
Yeah.
fully develop until you're
But it
25.
doesn't. Right. So you start to have those feelings of wanting to take control, but then you have no control over your body. It's a totally crazy time. I
So
would
tell us
not
more
ever
about
go
teenage
back.
boys.
Well,
us
yeah,
more about
well,
Teenage boys.
Yeah, I don't know that much about
funny.
teenage boys, but
the girls,
I think
yeah.
they do go through some sort of a cycle.
Oh,
Not,
yeah.
not quite sure. But with girls, sometimes in what I used to see a lot, I don't see that many PMS or girls with PMS anymore. I now see they're now in menopause because I started out so many years ago that they've grown now.
Yeah.
But one of the things I used to see is cutting behavior with the girls.
Like self-harm? Yeah.
Like
It's-
around PMS time.
around PMS time and starting around that time. And one of the things, it's not something
Angela's
we,
mouth
I'm like,
is dropped.
like things are
Yeah, it's-
popping. I'm like, this makes so much sense.
it's not something.
Don't cut yourself.
Yeah,
Don't do
yeah.
that.
I'm not gonna cut myself. No, I'm thinking about my clients.
No,
you
that's what I was
silly.
Yes.
saying. I was saying to people in general, don't cut yourself.
Really?
Oh, I see. It's a PSA.
So who does it?
The
who's-
more you know, don't cut
you don't
yourself.
see boys doing it. Boy, it's not
It
something
does happen,
Well,
that
actually.
it's
boys do.
happening some now, but like it is more frequent in women than men.
look, but
Men will
are-
do other self-destructive things. They'll jump
They'll
off
drink
of things.
more.
They'll drink. They'll
but
fight. They'll do other
both
destructive
sexes
things.
are becoming more androgynous now. You
That's
see.
true
So-
too. And there's
so-
more estrogen going into male food. Like we're using hormones in foods and like
It's because you put soy in everything.
yeah,
Do you know?
soy has
yeah.
Do you know how we make birth control?
Soy.
Soybeans.
Yeah, okay.
And guess what? We
Well,
put in
that's very
all.
common.
Well, that's how the
component.
natural hormones are made, actually.
Exactly,
too,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
So you shouldn't
Well,
eat
even
soy
the drinking
if you're a man.
water,
Really,
we have
I
no
avoid it.
idea of the drinking water. What really is
Lead.
Who knows?
They put
what
lead
it
in
is.
it.
We
Lots
just,
of lead.
we just
We don't know that for certain.
Yeah.
No. The old pipes here in our neighborhood are made of lead. In the houses, they're not lead, but the ones that run through the street, they are lead in most neighborhoods because they've been there for like 60 years, back when they didn't know too much about lead. Yeah.
well anyway.
And they
we're
also
talking
add,
about
what do they add? They add fluoride to it, and they add other chemicals
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
to
So
And you know, I've read
sterilize
actually
it.
that like there are certain chemicals that are present here in the United States that have been completely banned in Europe. Actually,
Oh, yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's like these are bad for you. You shouldn't do it. But in America, we're just not as health conscious. I don't know.
Well, we
Yeah,
are
what
starting
were we
to be a
talking
little
about
bit.
a second ago. Was it about boys? It was
well,
about
we're
health
talking
cycles.
health cycles and
That's
drinking water and how we don't know what's in the drinking water, whether that has any effect on our behavior, on our hormones, on whatever. But something is seems to be changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so anyhow, interesting. Okay. Well, are there any other topics that we haven't covered yet that are really important for us to cover? On
I don't
your
know. Did we
side or
cover
yours?
everything on menopause? Like,
We got menopause.
Yeah.
We hit PMS. Is
so
there
what's the
anything else?
treatments for menopause?
yeah,
well,
treatments.
you know,
Like, we didn't really-
let me talk a little bit about postpartum
Postpartum,
depression.
yeah.
Oh, that's
Okay.
important.
Yes.
So
yes,
that
yes.
is when a woman has had a baby, they can get a depression
severe
afterwards.
Yes,
depression.
and
And it can lead to death sometimes, like
it's
What?
very
murders.
often. Well,
and
if you remember,
Murders?
you remember Paula Sims. I know a lot
she
of
murdered
people,
her children, right?
I know a lot of people are going to
That's
say,
terrible.
"Oh, don't tell me that." Well, at that particular time, remember I mentioned Dr. Katharina Dalton, who was the person who named premenstrual syndrome, what it was. She wrote to me, and she's an English physician. She wrote to me at that time, telling me that I ought to get a hold of that woman's lawyer and talk to him about the views I had and she have had on postpartum depression, how that it was a hormone-related thing. And I think I did try to get a hold of the lawyer. Nobody was interested to hear anything that I had to say about it, but she wanted me to sort of see if I could testify on her behalf. Now, whether or not it was postpartum depression or not, I can't say, but I know that as the years went by, she sort of grew out of that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And but I have seen very similar things in people.
Was she convicted? and
Oh,
put in
yes.
prison?
Yeah, she was convicted.
I think she
Yeah,
just
generally,
got
if you
out of
kill
prison.
children, I don't think.
Well, there
there's-
were a lot of complex elements to that story. I remember that there was something like her doctor was already telling her that she shouldn't have another child, but her husband was kind of pressuring her to do so.
Right.
And I remember there was like she felt overwhelmed, like she was a stay-at-home mom, and not that. First of all, no excuses for killing your kids. I always have explanations, but not excuses. So
So
I do
you
want to
know,
clarify:
everybody,
don't
this
kill your kids.
PSA from Angela. The more you
PSA.
know, don't kill
Yeah.
your kids.
But like there were
dun,
some
dun.
complex factors that I think
Yeah.
contributed to it, and I've heard people
Sure.
make connections to
Yeah, people don't generally-
higher amounts of depression
people
when you're
don't-
not getting help from
Well,
your spouse, things like
sure.
that.
Sure. People generally crack when they're under pressure. I
Well,
mean, that's normal, but that doesn't mean you can
could
crack.
be.
We know
Don't crack.
that when a woman gives birth, you see, because her ovaries aren't functioning as they will later on.
Yeah.
She's very low on these hormones, especially again. It goes back to progesterone, and I have seen a lot of women don't talk about it. They don't want to tell anybody. Boy, let me tell you what I was feeling after I had that baby.
Yeah.
And I've heard it because they come to me with
I've
the
heard it too.
stories.
Well, there's a lot of
And
shame involved
I-
in any mental
Well,
health. A lot of people hide
think,
it.
how could I ever think like that?
Yeah.
What's wrong? Yeah, like
What's
even to
wrong
say
with
I don't
me?
like my kids sometimes
Oh.
people feel so
Oh.
guilty, and I'm like, so you're not the first person
No.
sitting on my couch who
We're
said that.
talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about.
There are times I
kill-
love my daughter, but there are times I'm like, ugh,
But we're talking
it won't
about.
stop screaming.
We're talking about killing too. I mean,
Oh, no,
that's
no,
what
we're-
they
I'm
feel.
not killing my
He's not
daughter.
gonna kill her, but like
No.
being in that space where you're so depressed and you're so desperate
like
that you
it.
feel like
and,
you
and they
could.
can't make sense out of it. It's almost like what the woman will say. I feel like I was possessed. Boy, did I hear that term a lot.
Right.
They actually
They feel out of
like
control
that.
of their own body.
Totally.
Yeah.
I remember
emotions.
somebody in my close proximity. I'm not going to like name anybody,
Sure.
but like I remember somebody who was a mom who had said there was a moment where she actually thought she might kill her children. She
Whoa.
asked her husband. She literally said, "You need to take them away right now because I'm in a bad spot." And like she was saying, there was a moment where she felt kind of crazy and overwhelmed, but it
yeah.
was like she didn't kill her kids. They're alive to
Good.
this day. But it was just an interesting like.
Yeah.
Like I know this person, I've known her my whole life, and it's like, wow,
Yeah.
that's so amazing, interesting that like
You'll have
you
to
had
tell me
that
later who
moment.
that
You're not
was.
gonna, I'm not gonna put that one on air because
Yes.
it would be challenging for her
Yeah.
to like
No,
the
yeah,
fact that she could be
sure.
honest with me about that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that so many women have babies and so few of them ever have postpartum depression is not something that you see all the time at all.
I think it's more common
It's
than
a
you
very
think,
high one,
actually.
actually.
It's I mean, they don't talk about it, and usually they get over it on their own.
Yeah.
But sometimes,
Or
when
they
it's
just grit their teeth
really
and bear it,
severe.
really.
And what I have found that I have always suggested and talked to their physicians, their OBGYNs about it, is starting them on high doses of natural progesterone right at their delivery if they have had this problem
had it
before.
before. Yeah.
They start
that
it
is
right then.
That is the most common birth control used if they're breastfeeding too, is a progesterone
Progesterone.
only birth
Right.
control.
So
Yeah.
it probably helps
Yeah.
with that.
Progesterone also to help prevent miscarriages. A lot of women who have frequent miscarriages are very low on progesterone.
Yeah.
So we see that. So once they start using the bioidentical hormones, they've been using them to prevent this. But years ago, they didn't, because we didn't have these hormones many, many years ago.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, there is a treatment for postpartum depression, and it is natural progesterone and maybe an antidepressant. Again, I never recommend those things, but
Yeah.
I'm not against that in these kinds of cases.
Well, and you can always try one, and if it doesn't seem to be doing it, you can add another one too. Even when I'm working with my doctor, they always do one thing at a time to see
Yeah.
how you're affected by
Right.
it.
Yes.
But I think it's important to note, like, so like I recently had recently, she's 2.5, but recently enough.
Recent enough.
Like
yeah.
I remember the packet that my hospital gave me, and one of the things it said is it's pretty high, like, commonality for women to have postpartum depression, almost up to like 6 months to a year after the baby.
Yep, right.
And so that was helpful to actually read, because I was
Normalize
like,
it a bit.
okay, this is likely going to happen, more likely than not. But then when it lasts, so that was what
it
they said
definitely
was the
happens.
more normal part. And then when it starts to last longer is when they would say, you might want to like get help here.
Yeah.
What would you say? Would you say wait that long, or like maybe you should get help
No,
sooner?
don't wait that long.
No,
A
I'd get
year?
help right away.
I'm just saying what the packet said, you know?
Yeah.
right,
No,
right
if you-
away. I wouldn't
If you
wait.
have a child and then you feel overwhelmingly depressed and you find
Mm-hmm.
no joy in your own child, you need to see a doctor. Like,
Right. Well, it's not
it's-
only the
you're also
depression.
missing out on enjoying the part of having a baby. You
Yeah.
know?
It's the weird
depressed.
thoughts too,
Yeah.
not just depression, but strange thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
very
Erratic
strange
thinking.
thoughts.
Yeah.
That aren't normal for you. In other words, if you're getting these feelings that are not normal for you, loving this baby and can't wait, and oh,
Right.
it's so dude, cute.
Yeah.
You're gonna try to say, I hate this kid. You know, I can't stand this kid, and that is what happens.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And it's all the time,
So
yeah,
right
for them.
away, I
So it's normal to have
get
some
help.
like getting overwhelmed
Yeah.
with having a baby.
Yeah.
Babies can be overwhelming. We
Yeah.
had a
I
colicky
very
baby.
much got overwhelmed. I remember like even trying to breastfeed her, I would do this
Yeah.
just often. And Josh, when he
Yeah.
saw that, he was like, Angela, do you need me to take the baby? Are you?
uh-huh.
Yeah.
I
she
did. I
was-
got overwhelmed.
She had a lot of rough
Yeah.
time
It's
with
tough.
that the
Yeah.
first
And
one.
she cried every half an
Yeah.
hour, like
Yeah.
literally.
But
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes every
She
15
didn't-
minutes.
She didn't sleep through the night till she was 18 months old.
It was really tough.
Yeah.
But see, it's not a mental
We love you,
thing.
Olivia.
We love you, but you're
But
killing
women-
us.
But women begin to think that they're mentally ill for this. Like, I
Right.
can't tell anybody because they'll know how
No.
crazy I am. It's like, no, it's okay.
It's normal.
It's,
yeah.
it's your hormones. I always said it, and I've started a book many times, and it's going to be, you're not crazy. It's your hormones.
Yeah.
That's the name
You're
of it.
not crazy.
You're not crazy.
hormonal.
Your body
Your
is.
Yeah,
hormones.
yeah.
You're a woman. No,
You're fine. Your
So-
body's the crazy one.
Anyway,
Get rid of
that's
it.
funny.
but
Sounds like it'd be a good book.
but anyways, but those are the kind of clients that I see: the PMS, menopausal issues, for infertility, sometimes also again hormonal in many of the, in fact, most of the cases. But there is help for those things, and it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's great.
cool.
Good to know.
Well, I think we've covered most of the
I
topics.
think we got everything.
Is there anything you want to plug before we end the show, or how do people find you if they want to see you?
Dr. Patricia Coughlin, Life Cycles Counseling, Psychology Today has a little website.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And, that's all. Been
That's
in
all.
practice for probably the oldest practice in St. Louis, 44 years.
wow.
I mean, if you
Yeah.
can believe that.
That's
Still
awesome.
going.
Still
now
going
I'm,
strong.
Now I'm seeing the PMS people as menopausal and even older, or the children of those women. So
Yeah.
I've been around a pretty long
Been
time.
around.
So one thing, if you're okay with this, because she didn't say this wasn't okay, like you actually look really young for your age, and I was just curious if you were open to like telling people how old you were.
Well, I'm 81.
No
She's
way.
81. Like
Yes.
I mean, like look at her.
No
This is
way.
An 81-year-old woman, and you just don't look it. And so
No,
like
wow.
that's actually
No,
one
you're
thing I
healthy.
like, kind of
Yeah.
like mentioning, because it's
Uh-huh.
like she's super healthy, so something's got to be going right with
Oh.
these bioidenticals. If you're
Yeah.
using
Well,
How do you stay healthy?
I play tennis
Oh, I
4
love
times
tennis.
a week. I swim a couple times. I do yoga. I do lots of things
Yeah.
like that.
Staying
You gotta stay active,
Those
yeah.
are
And
all
that
good.
screen you put in front of my face helps too. Not really.
Well, so then I also want to plug my stuff. I've got my book coming out in January. It's called Helping Couples Overcome Infidelity, a Therapist Manual. It's actually available on Amazon right now
Available
for
for
pre-order.
pre-order, yeah.
And I'm doing a training at WashU, actually at the end of this month on a Friday. So you can look up Helping Couples Overcome Infidelity. There's a whole training that I'm going to do at the end of this month on the
Right.
topic.
That's awesome.
I'd love to work with you sometime on a book.
Oh, well, I can tell you
About
exactly how to
hormones
do it.
and
It's
that.
really simple. Like, he actually taught me how to write books, and now I've just got like a way to plug
Well,
through
I'd
them.
like to co-author one with you.
Well,
you
that'd be
talk about
cool.
a part of it, kind of things that we're talking
Well,
about.
so you'd have to be open to a lot of crazy sexual stuff, though.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it would be like red and blue. Let's see how they come together, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Ebony and
Ivory.
ivory.
How can we represent both? both. But it wouldn't be
Yeah.
political. It'd be more
And
obviously about the hormones.
Yeah.
So you
healthy
also have a
sex.
big event coming up. You're going to be the keynote speaker.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
At-
I'm going to be the keynote speaker at the Missouri Mental Health Counselors Association. That's next weekend. And I'm going to tell
What's
people
the
how to
date?
change the world.
What date is it?
October 12th, 13th, and 14th.
And where is that at?
It is in Springfield, Missouri.
That's awesome.
I know. I'm super
What are you
excited
talking
about
about?
it. So, like,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Well,
Yeah, I want to
3
talk about this
points,
a little
right?
bit. What are you
Like,
talking about?
I am talking, it's called Innovative Impact, How to Use Your Therapeutic Talents to Change the World. That is
That's
the
the
title.
topic.
And
Yeah.
like I have 3 goals. One is innovate. One is make an impact. And then, of course, third is change the world. But basically, the goal...
Save the world.
I know, save the world,
Right, that's
right?
what we always
That's
say.
one of his
Save the
jokes
world.
is like, save the world, go, you know?
Go.
But I really do think that everybody has a way to change the world in their own way. And some of what I'm trying to encourage all of my therapists that I train to do is focus in on what you're really good at. Like, you really are good at some of this PMS stuff and the hormonal stuff. And so I really think it's important for therapists to specialize, to really get good at like 1 or 2 topics so that when they're doing that work, they become like the best person that you
They're
can go
experts
to
in their
for
field.
it.
Yeah.
And then you're providing better treatment, but you also feel like you're making that impact because you see it. And obviously you see it. You're seeing people throughout their years, right?
Yes.
And I see it by focusing on sexuality, that like when I help people come to terms with who they are and really be honest with themselves, then they become wholer, happier people. And every therapist has a gift that they have to offer. And I kind of want to encourage all of them for the things that they're doing and remind them that even though like it's slow moving, that's the hardest part about therapy. You know, like you do this work and like hours of like, okay, we're getting there. But that work is important and you are changing the world. So that's
Yeah,
kind of my
that's
focus
awesome.
for the
Yeah.
talk.
Well, you're pretty amazing. I'm
Oh, well,
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you.
extremely
She's
impressed.
pretty awesome.
Oh, I'm extremely
Oh,
impressed
go
with
on.
you.
Like she's having her
That's it.
second book. This is her second book
This is my
come
second
out.
book.
I know.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
know.
this one's on
Wonderful.
affairs, right?
This one's on
So
infidelity.
fun to
it's
write
such
about,
I know.
right?
I'm gonna have a whole year talking about the funnest topic. It's really
Well, no, we also had a whole year of you writing a book on it. So I
oh
was
my
like,
gosh,
good-
there were quite a few months where I was like, "Screw this! I can't do it anymore."
Yeah. I don't ever want you to write a
Yeah.
book about that again.
Believe it or
Ever.
not, I started a children's book about 35 years ago. And about every 5 years, I have to update it.
Yeah,
to
you'll
say,
get back in there, change it a
Oh,
little
I
bit.
mean, there was no such thing as a computer or a cell phone.
Oh, is it all
And
on-
Perfectionist too.
Yes, I keep
Oh, yeah.
saying this isn't going to
It has
work
to be
anymore.
perfect.
It's the problem
So-
with perfectionists. So, like, I saw this website where they showed all these images that perfectionists had done, and they were beautiful and colorful. But my first thought was, they don't show all the images of people who didn't finish it and like threw the books on the floor.
I
Right.
still got the book. I just, like I say, every 5 years I have to update
have
it
to
with
update
the,
it, yeah. That's
with the
fun.
new stuff. So
That makes sense.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us
Well,
on
thank
this
you
show.
for coming. It was
Fun,
really nice to meet
and,
you.
I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
And,
So
yeah.
this has been the About Sex podcast.
Of course.
You can find us at aboutsexpodcast.com or look us up on YouTube. You can find just look up the word Skirtu, S-K-U-R-T-U.
Yeah, Skirtu. It's
You can
unique
find
enough.
the YouTube. Angela's on there.
And you
It's
can
good stuff.
visit me as a therapist, www.therapistintlouis.com,
Right.
if you want to
So-
see a therapist.
And if anybody's listened to this on the podcast, we do live stream all of these now, so they're all coming on YouTube and a couple other places. But yeah.
Last thing, review us. You know, if you really like the show and you review
Yep.
us on iTunes, that's how we
Go
get
onto
more
iTunes.
viewers. So please do.
Yep. Everybody
Okay.
have a good night. Thank
you. Good night.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's fun. I hope it worked out okay.